Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome to an episode of Tales from the Doghouse Separation Anxiety Explained. I am Stacey Bell in the US with Focused Fun, and with me is...
Hello, I am Ness Jones. I am in Australia from Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded, and we have a special episode, don't we, Stacey?
We sure do. Yes, we do.
Very excited. We're going to be answering some listener questions.
Yes, I am just looking over some of our questions. Do you want to go with the first one?
Sure. So in my Facebook group, which is Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded, we got some questions. So firstly from Carolyn, she asks about Stormphobia with separation anxiety dogs and how to navigate that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a tricky one because this boy here beside me, this one, can you see him? Wait there.
Yes.
He for those watching on YouTube, not listening in your podcast, he's stormphobic. He does not like big scary noises. Luckily he does not have separation anxiety, but I don't like leaving him alone when he's having to deal with that, so I usually make sure I'm around if I think there's a storm coming.
Yeah. So with our separation anxiety dogs, I would definitely, I would work on the two pieces separately. And then, as you're working through your separation anxiety in the early days, we're like thinking safety zone there. So not training when there's even a chance of storms or anything associated with them. Some dogs can start off with like a storm phobia, and then it kind of backs up to maybe like a pressure drop even will trigger them, or drizzling or dark skies, or like, so it can be different for different dogs. But we want to make sure that in the beginning of separation anxiety training, that you're not training when any of those triggers are present. And then I would definitely work on the storm phobia outside of training before I even thought about training during a thunderstorm.
I've actually got a client, Benji, who's actually finished her 6-month program, and Benji did really well. He was
good.
Yeah. He was actually okay with his home alone time, and then they were out at night one time, and this huge storm rolled through, and it was very, very scary. And after that, he was unable to be by himself. So we've been working on that. He's gone really well, and he's pretty much back to pre episode, but it can be quite terrifying for them.
It really can. And just like with those dogs, like sometimes stormphobic dogs are also sensitive to other noises, just loud noises in general, or maybe it's just concussive noises like those air hammers that they do for building, or drums or something like that. So you'll just want to know what your dog's triggers are. And, we always, especially with working with external noises, and we've done a podcast on this, we're working with a combination of management and then teaching the dog to be okay with those noises. The management is definitely something that I would want to have in place, especially for these dogs, because there can be, unexpected things that happen, right? So we do want to, have some noise to try to mask it. Another really good thing for these dogs that are...
Sorry, that was one of my dogs sneezing.
Oh, God bless you. I know I've worked with a dog that had storm phobia, and we tried to make his safe place that he liked to rest in the closet, because not only does it not have any windows, which insulates from noise, but also if the flash of lightning is triggering for the dog, protects against that. But also all of that clothes and soft stuff dampens the sound as well. So that can be a really good option as if you're looking for a resting spot or a safe spot for your dog during storms. Then like we even just had him try to encourage him to do that during the departure lessons in case something came up. Cause he also had, he was triggered by noises like loud trucks as well. And so those things, you just can't control as much. So we did that, and that actually worked really well for him. Now he did also work with a vet on a medication regimen that would support him with not only the separation anxiety, but the noise phobia as well.
Yeah, for sure. And you could set his bed up in there or what have you, and make it.
Yes, that's exactly what we did.
Den-like environment. Oh, you can't drink my coffee, mister. He's like, oh, what's that over there?
He's crossing a line.
What I was going to say, listeners, or to our lovely audience, many of the topics that we are going to be talking about today, we do have fully fleshed out episodes that you can go back to and get some more detail, especially on masking noises and, environmental noises, especially in apartments as well, because that's even.
Yes. It is.
But if they're not on YouTube, then they will definitely be in the podcast episodes. So
yes.
YouTube channel's a little bit newer than the podcast.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Cool.
Yes, it is.
Should we move on to the next question?
Sure. Do you want to do one of mine?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of mine is, we always talk about, or frequently talk about, how separation anxiety or home alone training is a marathon, not a sprint, right? And so that calls up kind of the question of how to stay motivated in training. And so that's one of the things that it's actually not a client, but just a person reached out and asked. And so I thought that we would touch on that, just give some top tips for that. For me, a big part of it is, not only knowing what your goals are, but what those steps look like. So what the training plan looks like, because saying my goal is for my dog to be alone for 4 hours, for example, is not broken down in a way that that goal is going to be achievable for you. Right. So if you're working with a separation anxiety professional, then they will come up with those plans for you. And that is a really big advantage of working with a professional. But if not, then knowing how to create those plans to set your dog up for success, and just get those approximations and duration towards your goal, is I think a good way to stay motivated so that you're seeing those wins.
Oh, for sure. I also think with motivation, I say this a lot to people, is make sure you still remember why you've got a dog and go and enjoy yourselves together. So, make sure you're having that time off that you need to reconnect with your dog and with yourself. And, just I think if you just pushing, and because the increases in your duration times are going to be very small, it can be demotivating. So I think make sure you get out there, have some fun with your dog, take some time off, take whatever you need, so that you are able to return to your training and feel remotivated and re-energized. Yeah.
No, I think that's a huge thing, is to have fun with your dog, because any behavioral problem, really, not just separation anxiety, can, draw from your relationship and make it stressful in a lot of ways. So making sure that you take the time to just have fun with your dog, whatever that looks like. Do something that the both of you enjoy together.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Another one is like recognizing and rewarding yourself for those milestones. So if there are, little things that you're noticing, if you are working with a trainer, I'm sure that they will point them out for you. But sometimes we can get really stuck on duration, and not focus on other important things like consistency, not only the dog's consistency in doing well in this sessions, but also your consistency in getting the training done. So if you are having a problem with that consistency part of it, tying the training to another part of your routine can really help. Or asking a friend to help keep you accountable, or, something like that can really, really, really help you stay on track as far as the training goes.
I think it's really important to note that if you are building up in your time and you're getting longer and longer durations, and then you think, oh my goodness, this is taking forever, it's going to be Christmas before I'm at XYZ time, just look how far you've come. Look back to the beginning, because I think that is something people forget to do. They forget how far they've come. So maybe at the beginning you couldn't even step outside the door without your dog having a freak out.
Right.
Or maybe you could only step outside the door for 10 seconds, and then suddenly you're on 10 minutes. And yeah, sure, it's slow, but that's the whole point, so that the dog doesn't feel pushed too hard, setting success all the time. So just remember to look back at the beginning where you started. I think it's really important.
Yeah. And if you are working with one of us, we have an app that we use. And the other thing that can be really, really helpful is we have a graph, and it has a trend line on it. So not only are you looking at, where did I start, but you can also look at, sometimes if you have a session where your dog struggles a little bit, it can feel really demoralizing. But if you're looking at the graph and it has a trend line on it, so you can really just look at, how is my dog doing overall? It helps you kind of look at that narrative as opposed to looking at each individual session. So I really like pointing that out to my clients, because I think it's so helpful.
And we do have a few episodes on mindset and motivation. One of them is
we really do
human psychologist and dog trainer, Dr. Holly Tetz. We did one just recently. So yes, definitely check
with
that
Eva.
out. Yes.
Yep.
They will definitely
very good.
Yeah. Now we've got Jane. Jane says about, we definitely have an episode on this, separation anxiety dogs living in apartments. She says the neighbors are closer, yes, and it places additional pressure to fix a problem quickly. Yeah, it is a tough one. I definitely suggest, Jane, you check out that, delve through some of the old podcast episodes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if did we do one for YouTube as well? I can't quite remember.
I can't remember if that one's on YouTube, but
on so many episodes.
Yeah, I think top tips for apartment living is, doing the noise masking. So, especially if your dog is being triggered by external noises, which not all of them are, but if they are, really working on that piece of it, inside and outside of training. The other part of it that I would say is to really make sure that you're going at your dog's pace. So, the temptation is for a quick resolution because you have all this pressure, so that your neighbors will be happy. And so that, but the bottom line is that you cannot go faster than your dog can go, right? Or your dog is going to have over threshold experiences and then is more likely to bark and struggle with making progress, right? So there's no advantage to pushing your dog to go faster than they can handle, right? So you still have to do the training in the traditional way. There's no really shortcut, or we would have everybody do the shortcut, right? The last tip that I can think of, just like right off the top of my head, I'm sure I can think of more, but is sometimes I know that we will frequently say more space, more choice is better as far as where the dog is going to be for training. But in situations where there is a lot of noise, maybe next to the door you go out of, like hallway noise, or sometimes if the apartment is along a busy street, those windows can be really noisy, but maybe there's like a back room or a back part of the apartment that's not as noisy, not as exposed to the noise. And then you might toy with, is it easier for my dog to be back there, even though they are a little more confined than we would usually recommend, but the noise is so much less. So that might end up being a net good thing for your dog.
I think it's really also important to note, and this is whether you're in an apartment or a house, things are going to happen. Postie's going to come and drop some parcels there. Somebody's going to be out in the hallway. There's always maybe people talking out on the street or what have you, or in the hallway. Things like that are always going to happen. So we have to appreciate that. And if we can mask it, absolutely, for sure. But if we can't, it's a case of what happens next. So okay, maybe your dog will be reactive to whatever it is, but what happens after that? Is the dog able to settle down and relax again, or is it going to start escalating? And that's really good information to have, and really important.
Yes. Yeah. And so our episode on barking covered that a lot, how to kind of tell the difference between, is this a normal reaction for my dog, or is this a reaction that has tipped over into anxiety? So if that's something that your dog in particular struggles with, make sure you revisit that episode for more details.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right.
Very good. Is it my turn?
Yes, it is.
To do the next question. Okay. So next question is about blind and or deaf dogs. How do you modify the training for those dogs?
Yeah.
So I have not had a client, but I have worked with people in a group coaching kind of thing with a deaf dog. And the modifications that you don't have to make as many modifications as you would think you would, right? The biggest thing is to make sure that the dog knows you're leaving, right? So so we never want to sneak out on a dog, right? But with a blind and or deaf dog, we just really want to be very intentional about them knowing that we're leaving. So taking a little extra care with that. With a deaf dog, you can either use a hand signal or, place an object out. We talked about
something. Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit in
one of the other episodes.
No, it was about when your cue gets poisoned, when you're leaving cue gets poisoned. Yeah. We talked a little bit about visual cues. So you can use that visual cue. You can use a hand motion. With a blind dog that's not deaf, you could still use a verbal cue. But with a blind and deaf dog, you will probably likely use a tactile cue.
Or an aroma.
That's a good idea too. Yes. Exactly.
So as long as it's not toxic to the dog, and as long as it's not offensive to the dog.
Yeah.
You don't want to squirt it up its nose.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And we always have to remember that their sense of smell is so much more sensitive to ours. Yeah. So it doesn't need to be like this, flinging lavender essential oil all over your house. The other thing is if you have moved things around to get ready for the episode, for the training, and your dog is blind, that could be maybe cause of issue as far as like getting in their way, if you put up a tripod or if you put up a computer or whatever. So you just want to make sure that any changes like that are in a safe way. With some dogs, even if they're not blind and deaf, can benefit from having a bed near the door. So if your dog is deaf, but is kind of showing that it would be beneficial for them to rest near the door so they know when you're coming and going, you can always do that. Put a bed near the door so that they're comfortable as they're waiting for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other tips?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Obviously,
it's not as, I think in people's minds, it feels like it needs to be there need to be a lot of accommodations made for the dog, but all of the tenets of, managing absences, making sure you're going at the dog's pace and, building consistency and duration slowly, all of those things are the same. It's just the main thing that's different is just making sure the dog knows that you're leaving.
Yeah, the training looks the same. It's just that
Exactly.
That's really we don't have to overcomplicate it, make it trickier.
No, exactly.
Cool. All right. And then we have Pam, who says, oh, this is a tricky one. How to fix when small increments are not always possible.
Yes.
Yeah. So the problem with that is that these small increments are part and parcel of the training. We call it gradual exposure therapy for a reason. And it is supposed to be slow, and especially at the beginning when we're trying to set the foundations and build up a bunch of safe absences. So if the small increments aren't possible, we have to recognize that the training might not go as well as we would like.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about the apartment, if like how people might feel additional pressure because of their neighbors, but they're really, if there was a way to make the training go faster, then we would do that with everybody. Right. So there's not a shortcut. Now, some dogs do move through the training more quickly than others. That's
it is what
totally
it is.
the case.
Yeah.
But when we're doing the training, we have to go at that individual dog's pace. So rushing them or pushing them beyond their comfort zone will backfire. And in the end, the training will take longer.
And I've seen it backfire with clients that have followed the program and have insisted on pushing. And some of my clients, I'll say, yes, I think we can go up in chunkier amounts. But the ones where I don't think we can and they don't follow the program, then, they do actually end up having, it might work for the first 2 or 3 times and then they hit that wall and
exactly.
Back to square one.
Yeah. So we do really need to be careful for that. I mean, I think everybody who's working through home alone training with their dog wishes it would go faster, right? Wishes that there was a magic wand or a shortcut or something to smooth out all those obstacles that might be popping up. The one thing that I can think of that does tend to smooth the road a little bit is medication. So talking with your vet about getting a medication that can support your dog, especially if they have more than one area where they're experiencing fear-related behavior struggles. So that's the one thing that I can think of that would maybe help us move it a little bit more quickly. If we can get the right medication at the right dose for your dog, then that does smooth out training.
I also think obviously you want to do it when the dog is adequately exercised, when they're adequately mentally stimulated, they've had all their needs met in terms of their, physically and mentally, but also that if you're going to do this, not to do it when the dog is more likely to succeed, is at its best point to succeed. So it is tired, it's ready to rest, as opposed to doing it maybe when it's convenient to you because you've got 20 minutes, I've got to do the training and I need to do it in chunkier amounts, so do it when try to, we call it setting it up for success. So making sure everything's going to be at its optimal for training.
Right. And that's something that we really focus on in the early days of training. And then in our scenarios episode, we talk about later on in training, how we introduce some of those other layers back into training, those things that make it more difficult for your dog to be home alone. So if you are thinking, oh, well, I can't always do that, then listen to that episode to how we navigate that.
Yeah. Cool. Your turn.
That was my last one.
Oh, okay. Let me have a look. Wait there. Okay. So Beth says, I like this question. Beth says, how to introduce a dog walker during absences when you have worked up to a few hours. She says, it is a dream to get there, but I want to introduce when we are ready. I guess part of my query on that one is, it would also depend. We have got an episode on this too. way not on YouTube, but a long time ago we did one about doggy daycares and pet sitters and vets, all those sort of things. But so I guess it would depend on is a dog friendly with strangers for starters. But even if it's not, you can introduce them in a nice, kind way. I wouldn't leave the dog with this person initially. I would, I'd want to introduce them and be there together, and even take them, go out for a walk somewhere together, and then gradually introduce them to coming into the home. And you're there at first, and then maybe you step outside and just build up that time where the dog feels comfortable with the person.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned about how we have to help the dog build a relationship with the person first. I think that's a really important piece that's easy to rush past, even with dogs that are okay with strangers. I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, if you're having an expectation where a dog walker is going to come in into your house when you're not there, that's kind of another level of being friendly.
Yeah.
And so helping the dog to establish a relationship with that person, I think, is really important, and taking the time to do that. Now, I do always like to have a layer of safeguard in that, for especially the first few times that this person is coming into your home. So like if you have the door that the person comes in, if there's a way you can put a baby gate there so that the person comes in and your dog can recognize, take a second to recognize the person, or the person can just throw some food over the gate so that the dog can, because I know with, even with Rowan, because we always use the side door, but if I have somebody come to the house to let him out, then they usually come in the front door, right? And so when people come in the front door, it's a little bit like, wait, what? Even if it's somebody he knows, it takes him a second to realize. So he's, we just put a gate there as a layer of safety. And usually he'll recognize the person in seconds and be like, oh, yay, this person's, if he knows the person. If he doesn't, then he wouldn't be happy. But so that can be a layer of extra safety in that. But then as far as, okay, so you leave the dog, let's say, for 2 hours, and then you have the dog walker come. And then the dog walker is going to leave, I guess, is the question. How do we work that part of it? And, I'm assuming the dog walker is signed up, okay for the training to, they've bought into being a part of the training. And so I would set up another scenario for the dog trainer and work through it that way, which is, it can go more quickly than when you originally built up that 2 hours, but it might not. It just depends on the dog. If the dog feels like that's wildly different from what you're already doing, then it may take the dog some time to be able to build up time after the dog walker leaves.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll definitely be wanting to put that to the test before just saying, here, dog walker, take my dog out and just drop it back at home. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I want to know what it looked like first before I went and just said, okay, off you go. I'd probably actually hang around, if you can set it up. So, maybe let's say the scenario is you want to go out for 8 hours, and you want the dog walker to break up the day halfway through. So you're gone for your first 4 hours, dog walker comes in, walks the dog. I would probably want to be there when she drops the dog back, not in the house, but close by, watching on camera, so that, you can come back in if something goes awry. Yeah. Or just come back in so the dog's not alone for ages. If the dog walker maybe isn't on board with the training, especially if they're like, no, well, I can't hang around, I've got other appointments, then you need to be there to come back and maybe do a really short absence. Yeah.
Or somebody else. Sorry.
Rowan. It's usually my dog's barking. What's he up to? Yeah. Do you think
my husband just got home from work?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is something that you're going to have to test out. It's not necessarily a given that because you can leave your dog home for a certain amount of time that somebody else will be able to leave your dog alone. Now, some dogs, it's a little bit easier for them because they're not as connected to the dog walker. But you can't assume that. So you really do have to test it out and, be close by, or even if the dog walker leaves and you have a neighbor that you can call. But I would assume that it's something that you have to train through as opposed to my dog's going to be able to do this.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And one last question we have from Tina. She asks about homeopathy as an additional modality to training. Yes. So I don't know about you, Stacey, but by the time most of my clients have got to me, they've tried all the things in terms of natural and traditional, not traditional, in terms of natural remedies. And while they might see some small improvement in general, if the separation anxiety is pretty bad, the dog, it's not enough. So you might need to talk to it could be a case of talking to a vet, or at least doing the training, anything that will facilitate the training. And if you're getting, maybe your dog doesn't need full-on medication and maybe you do see a little bit of benefit from some sort of natural remedy, then by all means, why not add it to the training regimen. But if it's not having enough effect, I probably wouldn't waste my money, to be honest. Depends on. Can I just say, every dog is different, so I don't want to say blanket approach. Don't try it, don't use it. You must try it by all means. It's just that it's not. Like I said, with my clients, they've tried it. They haven't seen enough results to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's an unregulated industry, right? So you don't really know what you're getting. So that can be a tricky part about it. Also, even if you are noticing a difference with it, maybe your dog is generally more settled or whatever, and you're like, okay, I have never seen a case where taking the homeopathic whatever supplement has cured them of their separation anxiety, right? So there could be a small positive effect from it, but you still have to do the training, right? Just like with prescription medications from your vet. You still have to do the training. It can smooth, those prescription medications can smooth the way, but the training is still happening. It may happen more quickly with less regressions, but I have had a couple vets of clients of mine want them to try some of the homeopathic medication, or not medications, but supplements before they'll prescribe the medication. And so sometimes that's kind of a step that they have to take before they get medication. And every one of those clients has gone on to have medication, right? So I am definitely biased against them because I think it doesn't tend to, in my experience, it doesn't support the dogs as much as they need. And it's unregulated industry, and it's just delays getting the dogs on the medication that can support them better. And so I'm not a big fan for that reason, because of the delay and because they are frequently just as expensive or even more expensive than some of the medications out there.
Yeah.
No, they're really not.
Yeah. I think I'd just like to say there's no magic pills. So the only magic
There are no
pill
magic
you will
pills.
get is some sort of situational medication, which would be prescribed, that is going to knock your dog out for the count.
Mhm.
That is a magic pill, I suppose, but that's not sustainable, and you wouldn't want to give
No.
that dog that type of medication for the rest of its life. Every time you walk out the door, you're just going to knock your dog out. That's just not fair. Yeah, anyway. So with natural remedies, like definitely no magic pills. That you certainly, I would be shocked if you could use one as a standalone without doing training. So maybe if it's a mild case, it might facilitate the training. It might help your dog feel more comfortable, and then you do the training and it helps. But in general, if your dog needs medication, then it probably needs prescribed medication.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. That's the end of the listener questions.
Yay.
Guys, if you've got questions, do send them in to us. We love answering listener questions.
We sure do.
Yeah. So
We sure do.
Don't hesitate. You can reach out to Stacey at focusfun.dogs.net. Is that right? Focusfun.
Focusfun.net.
Yeah. Focus Fun. Why did I think it was Focus Fun Dogs?
Because on Facebook and Instagram, it's at Focus Fun Dogs.
You're trying to
my
confuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. It's not fair, is it?
It's not. It's pretty easy to confuse me. Yeah, or you can reach out to me at nessjones.com. So, but yes, or that's my website, but you can email me through there. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Cool.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We look forward to continuing the separation anxiety conversation next time.
Yeah, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, or subscribe, like, follow, etc., on whatever podcast you listen to. And yeah, good to talk.
We'll see you next time.
All right, see ya.
Bye.